And I'll check with Nellie, who formatted the 180 days, but she'll have a recording of this. So, if any of your colleagues would like to listen, we'll have that available on the website for you. So, um, that is something that I just wanted to make sure that I shared tonight. So, again, welcome. And I thought what I would do this evening is I would give a little bit of some new research. And hi, David. It's so good to see you. I see former cohort members,
Good to be here. Thank you.
and yeah, it's good to see you. Um, but I want to give just a little bit of background about the why of this 180 days. And I really been thinking about it all day because I've been home. So I just thought back to 2018 when the Indiana Department of Education was very excited about the 100 days of educational neuroscience as a part of the SEL competencies that Dr. Brandy Oliver and I created for the state. And since that time, as what has happened in many states, our SEL competencies have been taken down and they're under a new title in the state of Indiana. So we decided that the 100-day toolkit, as we called it, and Deanna Nybarger was a former colleague of mine. She was actually the first educator that I did a course release with, where I went into her fifth grade classroom. And I remember calling her one holiday and said, are you up for this? I really need some help with the 100 days. So it really began about 5 years ago. And once they took it down, some of the links had broken, and I really wanted just to completely update and augment the scope and sequence because I look at this scope and sequence as a tier 1 trauma responsive um, tool and resource. I'm not ever going to say program. So I'm trying to find the words, but it supports the applied educational neuroscience framework, and it is constantly and will constantly be updated. My hope is that by the middle of next summer that we will have an app for this. So along with updating. In fact, I sent Nellie some things that I used in seventh grade this week that I want to add to the scope and sequence. So, with that being a part of this tonight, let me just give you just a couple of key points that I really wanted to share this evening. I look at the scope and sequence as discipline on the front end. And for those of you who I see Rob with me tonight, I mean Trish, and people who are with me sit beside me a lot right now. You've probably heard that at nauseum, and Dustin too. But I really am serious about this. It is a new lens for discipline. The scope and sequence is tier 1. It's not for those kids. It's not for those students. It is a tier 1 framework. And here is something else that I want you just to hold on to this. It is not just about kids. This scope and sequence is as much for adults as it is for our students. And so, my hope and what I'm thinking about all the time is how do we integrate this into our schools where school leadership is modeling the practices, so that the adults through PLCs, through department meetings, through grade level meetings, through staff and faculty meetings, how can we begin to embody these practices held in each of the days so that we have comfort in sharing this and in modeling this for our students? So I do want to be very specific about that. We've really tried to integrate equity into the scope and sequence and to really, through the practices, through the differentiated strategies, through the reflection pieces and the templates, we've been very aware of the lens from which we are sharing the scope and sequence. So I want to include that's another key point tonight. So I'm going to pull up a just a couple of slides tonight that I want to share with you. And I promise to leave time for questions, and then I'll actually model one of the days for you this evening. So I'm going to pull this up here. So as I think about the 180-day scope and sequence, and I share this slide a lot, but it really, again, is as much for my nervous system as it is for the children and the youth that I sit beside. And I actually look at the 180-day as a resource that I can embody and install when I'm struggling. It's a touch point for me. It is a way for me, whether I'm using this with family, because this transcends our professional life. If I had had this framework with my children when they were little, we would have, I literally, they probably would have not liked having it every day, but we could have had this as an activity all the time in our home because we carry in who we are. So this 180 day is really about doing our own work, modeling it for our students, and it mirrors, you know, what we are hoping to integrate all day long, not just from 10 to 10:30. You know, this is not an SEL program. I'm just going to say it resembles one and it acts as one, but it's much deeper and broader, and it encompasses every aspect of our humanness. It is really about human development and the biases that we hold, the embodied experiences that we carry in, how our perceptions drive our lives, and we question those in this. So as we think about this, it is so accurate now to say that the social and emotional organ is the body. And that's what the scope and sequence is about. There is a heavy focus on the nervous system. And you do not have to be a neuroscientist. This is the coolest thing. It's a touch point because the kids love this week in seventh grade, not today, but I was in there yesterday afternoon and we were creating, we had like moved to the line if your prefrontal cortex had to make a difficult decision this week. And so they moved to the line and so, but we didn't talk about behaviors. We didn't use the word choice. We didn't use the word, we didn't talk about, what was your reaction? We said, where was your prefrontal cortex? So we really provided and empowered our kids with the language of science. And that's what I love about this scope and sequence. And for those of you who don't know, I am co-teaching in a classroom 2 days a week. And this is my seventh grade team. And actually, I was with Mr. Gerbrandt, and I love his smile. I was with him yesterday, and he emailed me right before my class last night. And he said, "I'm so sorry. I kind of left everything up to you. I was just participating with the kids." And I told him, I said, that's what I want. You didn't have to worry about discipline, and didn't have to do that yesterday. So this is the seventh grade team at Belzer Middle School in Indianapolis. We have 1,195 seventh graders and eighth graders right now. So we are a large, very diverse middle school. And our free and reduced lunch, our demographics are pretty significant. I think we are about 88% free and reduced. And many of our children, or I should say our adolescents, are carrying in some significant adversity and trauma. So this is what I want to talk about just for a minute with regard to the scope and sequence, and then I'm going to share with you where it leads. So these are the 4 pillars, and we're actually going to create a more in-depth look at these 4 pillars. We're going to put a hollow in each of these trees so that we can give you specific examples of what we're talking about. But the pillars do not stand alone. That's why we've created how the trees lean into each other. They nurture, they provide nutrients to one another. They can't survive well without each other. So this scope and sequence is about the adult nervous system. It is all about co-regulation. And we're going to be, I mean, when I think about co-regulation, I'm fascinated with how significant this is in our discipline protocols because we're social creatures. So it's at the heart of how we really sit beside our children and youth in their toughest moments. Um, it is sharing my nervous system, my emotionally available presence with the child. Touch points, that's what the scope and sequence is about. It's fabulous. I'll move this bar. Sorry about that. It's fabulous that you don't know. You're learning this with your students, you're learning this with your staff. And then it really hits the fourth pillar. When we understand that negative behaviors are only signals, we begin as students and really as adults to feel empowered and relieved by the way that we can understand how our nervous system is always trying to find this balance. And so when we are angry, when we are worried and we feel anxious or we collapse and just retreat and shut down, our nervous system is talking to us. Our nervous system's language is the barrier because we're not fluent in that language. But this is hopeful and this is the best news. And that is, I really have to say, even though the scope and sequence is about all of the pillars, it really leans into the fourth pillar. So I just want to show you why this is so significant when I talk about why I talk about discipline. I have a couple new slides I want to show tonight. So I one of the things I've been thinking about lately is um, making radical imaginable. And we are in a crisis in education. And in that crisis, we have opportunities. We see the disproportionality in our discipline systems and the disparities. We see the social loss. We can feel it. It's tangible coming from our kids. We feel the fatigue and the tangible exhaustion from so many educators who are having to make really challenging choices right now, and many are leaving the profession. So as we, as we see so much breaking apart, this scope and sequence really is addressing discipline on the front end. It's addressing our emotional, physiological, social, and cognitive well-being. And this is why right here, because traditionally we look at discipline in a very reactionary way. And we think about, okay, what should the consequences be? I was disrespected. This was inappropriate. And so now we react. And what I love about the scope and sequence, it's built into our procedures. And I just can't emphasize that enough. It is about bell work, or maybe you call it do now, bell ringer, morning meeting. It's the first few minutes of a class. It's the first few minutes of a staff meeting, because this is about adults as well. It is checking in with our nervous system. It's a part of our routines and procedures, and therefore it feels very safe because it's predictable. And when I walk in now, I started to say February, it's January. When I walk in to Crystal's classroom to co-teach, or Mr. Gerbrandt's or Alexa's, there is a sense, I feel it, there's a sense of relief. And Crystal told me the other day she's feeling that now, when they come into advisory, because in seventh grade, we are trying very, very intentionally to integrate the scope and sequence in the district, in middle school, in our advisory, or you may call those homeroom classes. So I'm sorry, I'm going to stop and I'm going to share just a couple new slides. So, when we think about consequences, the scope and sequence is a consequence to relational safety. It is engaging our kids relationally, preventatively, and it's checking in with them. It provides it lessens resistance. And it's something that this is a real adult mind shift. It's just really because our consequences are traditionally, they produce fear-based responses in students. So when I think about the scope and sequence, um, it's really providing a consequence on the front end, and it's hopeful, and we're moving from protections, or from we're moving in the direction of growth instead of states of protection. So this is brand new, and this is something that I've really been thinking about, with the scope and sequence, and it's connecting and building those relationships in those predictable everyday ways, so that when there is a conflict, there's trust, there's awareness. My nervous system is more prepared because I've been walking and joining up with my students, and the scope and sequence meets our students in their emotional state. So when we think about, our consequences being relationally safe, this is a tool, a resource that we can begin to use that will help us build those or strengthen those relationships. And as we look at those four pillars: touch points, giving our kids the science, helping them to feel like I'm not a bad kid. There's nothing wrong with me. My nervous system has learned how to react or respond this way because of my experiences. So it's not excusing behavior, but it's really, about validation and developing the practices all day long. So this scope and sequence is not from 10 to 10:30. It really is carrying it into your content. So there are, and I'm going to go to the scope and sequence now, but it's about, when you are, teaching a content area, a subject area, it's really pulling in, what do you think the nervous system was of that character? What do you think they were experiencing, based on what we've talked about today? So I want to stop for a minute, and that was a lot in about 20 minutes. So I would love for you to unmute. I'll look at the chat too. I don't have my grad assistant with me, so I'm not very good at checking my chat. But I would love for you to ask questions, or for those of you who are using it right now, I would love for your input. So if anyone, just anything at all that's on your heart and mind before I pull it up and kind of go through a lesson or two.
Lori.
Yes. Hi,
Hi.
Stephen.
I so appreciate you and your work, and
Thank you.
and actually I'm going to put my email in the chat because I've emailed you a number of times requesting consultation. That's okay.
Oh no.
I live in South Dakota, and we just last week started a pilot project with 7th graders, and
Okay.
I'm a trainer for Deb Dana, and so I train in doing Foundations 1 polyvagal, and I'm struggling a little bit as we get ready to start with this 7th graders about I want to teach them all about polyvagal and their autonomic nervous system. But the beginning part of 180 days is all brain science, which I'm very comfortable and familiar with. But can you share thoughts in terms of the two of those together, or one versus the other?
Yeah, and Stephen, first of all, my apologies. I don't know what's happening to your emails, because I am the best responder. Like, I pride myself on responding to emails. So I am so sorry.
No worries.
So yeah, so I don't check my spam very often, but yes. So I love your question. And actually, we did kind of build that, what is the brain? We started with the brain, and then we built in, you'll see as you kind of go through, or maybe you have already, that we've integrated the ands kind of midway through, kind of starts about day 18, 19, 20, and then we kind of carry it the rest of the way through. But interestingly enough, this semester, with a new group, I didn't start with day one. And I'm so glad you asked this. You do not need to go in order. I'm not going in order. I'm so, because that was something I wanted to share tonight. Um, we started, in fact, I want to show you all something really quickly from this. So, Stephen, this is seventh grade, and we started with the ands this semester. So I'm going to show you, this is from, I can't remember which day it is, but we started talking about our autonomic nervous system and the sensations we were feeling when we were in fight, flight, or, activating, mobilizing for energy, or when we were shut down. So these are the drawings that our seventh grade students shared. And I think they're remarkable.
Yeah.
And that's where we started in January. So I think I started at day 18, and then we started kind of going back to day 1 and day 2 and 3. I showed them the Harvard Brain Bank, the videos about that. We talked about the hippocampus, and how, the amygdala firing, because that really makes sense. Here's one. I love this one. Feeling very sleepy. I love the eyes there. Um, Here's this one. Leisha says heavy, hot, trapped. So, and this is just a sample page, of that. So, Stephen, I hope that's helpful. But,
Yes.
I did start, like, you could just kind of go through it, and just where you feel most comfortable, and what you feel the kids would understand. Um, Also on day 20, we talk about the ants trying to protect us, and we've got these great videos that Peter Levine also shows about the impala, and then looking at the freeze response when a possum is playing dead. Whoops. So anyway, I love your question. So thank you for sharing
Thank
that.
you.
Yes. Anybody else? Any thoughts or feedback? Questions? This is I can't believe there's 39 of you tonight. This is so fun. Okay.
Hi, Lori.
Yes.
It's Sherry in Newcastle.
Oh my gosh, Sherry.
Hi.
Hi. I'm so glad well, yes, can you please share what we're doing in Newcastle?
Yes, I just briefly, but I also want to say she is very good about email. So I'm guessing that went to spam. So yeah, so we're very blessed to have Lori with us consistently in Newcastle. And I wanted to just kind of verify what you just told that gentleman, that I've been pushing in. I'm curriculum director at Newcastle, and we have the framework focused in pre-K 8, grade 8 this year. And definitely we have been supporting and guiding our teachers to realize this isn't something more on the plate. This is the plate. That we can't have we can't teach and have kids ready to learn unless we take the time. So I think it was just important for me to give that license, because teachers feel very much, and I understand they have to get so much in a day, and they feel the pressure of state testing. And I can say it a million different ways. And I've said this to Lori, sometimes I think I must be saying it wrong because I'm giving them the license to take the time to do this. But I just wanted to reiterate. So I push in and do lessons as well, because like you said at the beginning, we as the adults have to model it with each other. So I'm pushing in and doing lessons, and I pushed in yesterday to a high ability 5th grade, and I did an ANDS lesson. But then later in the day, I was in a 1st grade, and I went back and did just about, teach them about the brain and the neuroscience. So just wanted to reiterate and show and say that I can say from experience and as we are practicing. And I will say too, one of the neatest things about this is it's not just in the classrooms. Some of our best response has been with our non-certified staff, bus drivers, lunch, cafeteria workers. They're very excited. They need the language too. I think it defeats the purpose. Sometimes those are the areas where kids need the framework the most. And some of these people are the first point of contact every day. And we know what a start means to students with trauma. So I just wanted to make those couple of points as well, and thankful for this framework, that it is really for everybody in your buildings.
Yeah, Sherry, I'm so glad you shared that. And so I asked the question tonight, how can we create a space for our support staff, our bus drivers, our SROs. How can we be intentional about integrating this framework, with our office staff? I mean, these are the people that, like Sherry just said, that have contact with kids, that build relationships with students that we often cannot and do not see. And these are touch points for our students. So, yeah.
I think
Oh,
what really
Carrie,
helped with some of our non-certified staff and to have the buy-in is to tell them, how important that is, and to spotlight those that they don't even realize it, but they are following the framework. I pointed out a few when we had the recent training with your colleague, Joe Bowman, and I point out a couple of our cafeteria workers from high school, because they have been the pros for 20 years building relationships. They now get invited to past students' weddings and baby showers. And I just had to
Mhm,
let them know that's what you've been doing all these years. You are our model. But I
mhm.
think sometimes my point is that we do these things and don't realize it. Maybe we don't give a name to it, but we do have to be more intentional. And that's really my goal, is that let's keep doing these things, but let's be more intentional and make sure we have each pillar represented in our classroom.
Yeah, Sherry, thank you so much. And I'm sorry, I was supposed to be in Newcastle all day today. That's so I'll
Yeah,
that
well,
got yeah, that
lovely,
we'll
lovely
see in
snow and
February.
e-learning. So
Yes.
we'll make it up.
So one of the things that I'm doing, something for you to think about too, and again, please know that, I will work with you with the price of this as well. We've had small districts that have come to us that have said, we just can't afford the district price. And so I could give it away. I mean, I hope you all know that. Everything else is free on the website, but for this, we really have to be very intentional, and we want to be able to use this, for title schools and as an SEL program. Um, but what I do want to share with you is that I'm meeting with, like, Sherry's in Newcastle and in Lawrence Township. I'm modeling this. I'm going from school to school, and I'm meeting with their resiliency teams. So teachers to model. So I'm actually modeling these lessons for the educators, and then giving them an opportunity to ask questions, to give feedback, and just to share with them, a little bit, as we are tonight, the purpose of it, the outcomes, and what we hope, will be, just really enlightening and engaging for ages, 3 and 4 to 90. So, yeah. Any other comments or thoughts or questions or examples?
I think too, I don't mean to take take advantage of your time, but my passion, I just feel like I need to say some things to, if there's people that aren't real familiar with the scope and sequence. Um, I always make sure teachers and just all my staff realize too, that it's not that you need to do every single piece of every
Yes.
lesson or activity. I think it's important, they need to have the ownership to know what their kids need the most, to know what every class is different. All my buildings are different. So what one person, we're certainly not saying, okay, it's January, whatever, everybody should be doing day, whatever. That's not what this is about. It's
No.
what your kids need at what time.
Yes, and so that's a great way. So I'm gonna pull it up. I can't believe it's 7:30 already. I knew this would, and oh, we are gonna meet again in March 25th. So I'm gonna pull this up. So this is, as I said, it's a PDF, and again, we'll be building upon this. But I want to show you something. So there's a video to share with with your building, with your grade level department. And this is available, I think, on the website to everybody, just to kind of share what it is and why, the kind of the purposes of it. The table of contents. And again, it's so interesting. If you give educators, teachers, something that's too scripted, they don't want that. But then if it's too, then I didn't want to script this. I didn't want that. I wanted to give guiding questions. I wanted to give practices. I wanted to give resources and suggestions, but I intentionally didn't script this because I want it to be unique and personal to each classroom or building or district. So as you think, again, you can skip down, you might, we had, our fall was rough. So we really hit stress in the brain last semester. We did go back and we talked about the autonomic nervous system and the neuroanatomy of the brain. But we really hit stress in the brain. So I want to show you on each of these, there is a teaching time. And that is just a suggestion. And this is something, and Sherry, I'm glad you're on tonight. We have talked to all the principals in Newcastle and to the resiliency teams, or advisor leads, that spend 5 minutes, just, it doesn't matter. You don't have to spend 10 or 20 minutes. You might just have a really, just a question, and let the kids in morning meeting talk about, what they experienced in their amygdala last night, when they were upset, or tell us a time when someone in your family, when their amygdala was firing and their heart was beating fast, and they got hot and sweaty. So, or draw it. So it can be 5 minutes. It never has to be 20 or 30 minutes. The other thing that I also want to share in the resources, and this is from my experience, I'm in middle school, so you would think I'd be pulling from secondary resources. So in some of these, we have specifically, and again, we've got to meet kids where they are emotionally. I am using more elementary resources than I am secondary right now. And I feel that is because I really want to meet the kids emotionally. And so some of the videos I'm showing, some of the vocabulary, how we're using some of the posters, and you'll see these diagrams, and we created all of these for you, or purchase them for you to print out. They're yours. And so you can make posters out of them. I'm just going to kind of skim through here. We've been really working I did this one with all the administrators in Lawrence Township. So I like for everybody right now, just to grab something to write on, or you can write in the chat. And I want you to, the chat would be really fun, since we can see that. But as we think about, I'm going to pull this up really quickly. So as we think about our nervous system, and knowing that not only does the brain have plasticity, but the nervous system has plasticity. And, that's what Deb Dana gets so excited about in her presentations. It's not just about the brain anymore. But we do know right here behind your eyebrows is where we do school and we do life. This is where we make decisions, where, we find some steadiness. I'm kind of moving away from the word calm. And we can pause and hesitate before we say something that we'll regret later. We can hold working memory. So grab a sheet of paper, and I want you to write down a snack, or like a food or a candy, that when you're in your prefrontal cortex and you're feeling pretty curious and calm, you're feeling pretty good. What candy, snack, or meal reminds you of that steadiness and calm? So go ahead and just jot down, don't overthink, just jot down a piece of food, candy, a snack, whatever that is. And then we're going to do the same thing down here for the amygdala. And the amygdala is, again, we're being very schematic. The brain does not work in regions or sections. But as Joseph Ledoux shares with us, we know more about anxiety and fear from studying the amygdala. So we really call it our vigilance center or smoke detector. And there are one in each hemisphere. And so in the amygdala, I want you to just jot down what candy, what snack, or what food you think of when you think about when you get activated. when you feel rough, when you're feeling worried or angry or very anxious? So just take another 30 seconds. And now what we're going to do is I just want you to jot down a moment in the last 2 days where you made a pretty difficult decision or important decision, or you were really stretched to use your memory. Like you were really pulled to remember a chain of experiences, names, things, events. So think of either a difficult choice, or you were really pulled to just you could feel it almost hurt to use your prefrontal cortex, or you were problem solving with someone. And then the last one of the 4, when you think of hippocampus, which is a part of how we process memory, and we think of short-term, long-term visual spatial memory. When you think of that hippocampus, when you think of it as kind of holding your memory like a librarian and processing short-term to long-term. So think of a time when you just know that hippocampus was activated. I mean, you were just working really, really hard to, again, remember, thinking of details, thinking of something in the correct order. And maybe that was in the last week. And I'm going to pull out of this and go back here. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute. So what I would like for you to do is we're going to go back to the food. So I would love for someone to unmute and share a food for your prefrontal cortex. You can just unmute. I have not looked at the chat, so let me. Anybody, while I'm looking through this, anybody want to share one? So I like the red hots.
Dark chocolate.
Dark chocolate for the prefrontal cortex?
Yes.
Because you love it and you enjoy it so
Yes,
much?
absolutely.
Okay. Oh, I see that. Oh, somebody else said that too. Lori said that. Chicken salad. I don't know if that was for the amygdala. Can someone unmute and share the amygdala? What's your food or snack or meal?
Hot Cheetos.
Did you say hot Cheetos?
Yes.
Robin, is that Robin from Gary?
Yes. Hi.
Oh, I thought I recognized that voice. When I see a black screen and just a first name, I wasn't sure. So hi.
You don't want to see me right now.
Okay. All right. Hot Cheetos for the amygdala. All right. And then can anyone share a time in the last day or two where your prefrontal cortex was really activated? You were trying to remember a sequence, you were either problem solving, or maybe you got a creative moment. But just when that you could just feel yourself focused and concentrating. Our kids did so well with this yesterday.
Analyzing NWEA data and putting it into Khan Academy and finding the right level.
Oh my gosh, that is such a great example. Absolutely. And it's so funny because not that I'm comparing the two, but our kids yesterday talked about taking a test and also remembering like a math formula. Like they were really thinking about like the steps that they had to remember to be able to do long division. And then what it was like when they couldn't remember. But I love that, collecting that data, analyzing that for the NWEA. That's a great example. What about your hippocampus? Anybody have an example of that? I love the foods that you used. Hot cocoa, chicken noodle soup. I'm going through, these are awesome. Make sure you look at the chat. Jolly Ranchers.
I have one for the hippocampus.
Yes, thank you.
I was in class with Deb this morning. We have 450 participants in the Netherlands, and leading them through an exercise of cues of safety and cues of danger, and having to
Yeah.
remember each one of the steps of the exercise.
Oh, that's absolutely a great example of that. And that's a lot of people in a course, Stephen. So that's a great example. Yeah. So I want to show you just a couple more slides here. What I'm finding that I'm doing with the 180 days is I really am, to meet our kids where they are, I'm really just helping them to learn some of the language, you know, and to not talk about the behavior and so much feeling, but to use the language. So I'm going to share my screen, and I just want to show you a couple of examples. So one of my former graduate students, Connie, also Angie Zara, helped. This was Connie's graduate practicum. So when Deb, Dana, and I actually reworked this one, we were working on, you know, just look prefrontal, you know, like prefrontal cortex, where you're in your social engagement system, and the brake is on the ventral vagus system. This is fight flight, and this is shut down. Then what we've done with the students is we've created one. Connie created this for, you know, children to see images, for them to be able to check in with their nervous system, to be able to share, you know, where they are. We're moving throughout these autonomic states all day long. So this is in the 180 days. This is one that's very recent. I'll put this in the current. I think it just kicked me off again. That is the weirdest thing. I'm going to have to, let me share the screen again. So sorry, everyone. So this is a check-in from a behavioral intervention room that they are using with the students and with the staff. So you can see they're just really individualized. Here are a couple more of the polyvagal charts. And this is, again, we use it all day. You know, this is something that we can use all day long, and we can talk about it. Students can choose to share why they're in that autonomic state or not. And Trish, I may have you share in just a minute how you're teaching first grade students about their ANDs and your experience with that, because the entire autonomic nervous system has plasticity. This is second grade, and this is from the 180 days. So we had the students personalize theirs, and then they're putting them on the polyvagal chart to show how they're feeling in their nervous system. The other thing that, I wanted to share the sensation wall with you. Let me get out of here just for a minute. Trish, do you want to, would you be okay to share a little bit about how you're using it in first grade? You're muted.
There, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
So what I do is every day when the students come in, they have to check in that, well, they go to their desk, they unpack, and then they pull out their little ANS folder, and it has the drawing of the, I don't know if you can see this because I took a pic. This was from today. Can you guys see that? Is it blurry?
Oh, yeah, now I can see
Okay.
it. Oh, yeah,
So,
yeah.
so they have to highlight, they have to identify a sensation and they have to highlight where they're feeling it in their body. And then there's journaling pages attached to it, and they have to write why they're feeling that way. So this particular student, and we do this every day, and it's great because they understand, they're first graders. They understand that they can go through blended states, and they may come in and they may be frustrated, and then 15 minutes later, they're feeling calm or peaceful. So this particular student said that he was worried, and I asked him what he wrote in his journal, and it really, for a first grader, he said, let me get my glasses on, I'm sorry. He said, I feel worried for my family. My family lives in the Philippines and they don't have much food. And I was blown away by that, because
Yeah.
he was definitely worried about that. And that was something that it's, he's carrying that with him. And so
Yeah.
the thing I love it just gives them validation. They're able to explain how they're feeling. They understand the sensations. And we review it. We constantly go back and review. What is the sensation? What are some words? And we'll make another list, and they always change. But it's been a wonderful thing in my classroom. And I started the year out teaching them about their brains and the amygdala, hippocampus, and prefrontal cortex. And then we moved into the ANS. And like, was it Sherry who said, you don't have to go in order. I pick and choose like where my students, you meet your students where they're at, and then you go from there. And it has been an amazing experience for me. And this is my second year doing it. And I really can honestly say I don't have behavior problems in my classroom, because they get in front of their behavior.
Mhm.
So that's what I have to say.
Yeah, Trish.
Trish, I have a question for Trish. The ands that you do every morning, the bell work when they come in, is it like laminated and then they erase yesterday's?
Yes, they laminate it, and they use I laminated them. They use a highlighter,
Great,
and then I go and clean it for them when they're finished.
thank you.
But we have a community circle, and they bring their ANS journals to the carpet, and then they each get a turn to talk. And if they don't want to share, they don't have to share. I don't force them to, but yeah, it's they use a highlighter, and it's easily cleaned.
Thank you.
Mhm.
It's a great way to co-regulate too when the kids are really rough. I want to share, and Trish, thank you so much. That was awesome.
course.
This is not brand new, but I'm really working on these questions. I'm going to be sharing this more. So when we think about the nervous system, one of the things that, I'm starting to just open up in morning meeting, and I'm going to be adding this to the 180 days. But, it's like, what do your eyes need right now? What's like, if your eyes could see anything, what would they want to see? What do your eyes need? If your heart could talk, because that beautiful vagus nerve of our autonomic nervous system is connecting our belly brains, our heart brains, and our skull brains. And our kids know that. But it's like, okay, so what is your heart need? If you could give your heart, just anything in the whole world. And this is for older kids, for younger students, or if your heart could talk, what would it say right now? What does your belly need? If your belly could just, grant its wish, what is your belly saying to you right now? What do your hands want to hold? What do your hands need right now? What do they want to do? What do your legs need? That's something, sometimes our kids just need to move. So this has been really a great way to start the day, to end the day, to start a class period, to end a class period, to transition. But, it's really helping our kids to become fluent in the language of their nervous system. And then I wanted to share the sensation wall with you. And I think it is there. Maybe it's up. Anyway, I don't want to make you sick going through this. Let me see if I can. Rob, if you're still on, look, I share your story with your Ukrainian student. I don't know if you're still on, but
I'm still here.
that's that. Oh my gosh, it's the most beautiful story of co-regulation. Um, so this is the sensation. This is an example, and this is in the toolkit as well. The kids can create their own sensation word walls. They can draw their sensation, color it, give it lines, give it shapes. You can use images. Um, and images just aren't for younger children or our neurodivergent children. I mean, I love images. I mean, when I see that fried egg, I feel like that at the end of some days. When I see that big knot, that's how my nervous system feels. So this is, I feel that what most of the SEL programs are missing, it is sensation. It's really the language of the nervous system. And there's a lot, there are lots of resources for you with regard to different ways you can use sensation and how you can, integrate that language every day so that it becomes common and predictable. So does anyone have any questions or thoughts or examples? I would love to know how you're, if you have this, how you're using it in your school or classroom.
Dr. Laurie, it's Dustin. So I think it kind of touches a little bit on what Sherry was talking about. I think so often as administrators, we have to feel like we're giving our staff permission to do some things like this. And so it's really about that intentionality. And there's a big chunk of vulnerability that's involved in this work as well, and getting that through to our staffs. So for us, when we began using this, it wasn't one of those things that was like a mandate. It was here's the power of some of this, and empowering students with the science behind it. So at our school, we have some of our grades that are using the 180 days. And then we have others that they're like, I'm not really buying in yet. But as the year continues, they're seeing some of the outcomes from those grades that have been doing it, and the conversations that are being had when we have to do some repair due to some behaviors. And so I think it's had a positive impact in showing the power of it, and it almost becomes oh gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? It almost becomes contagious. They see the power of it, and kids want to know more. So it's been a great thing for us, and we'll continue to evolve and utilize these tools as well. And it really is having a positive impact on our entire culture of our school.
Thank you, Dustin. And I really appreciate that. And really that's my hope. It's not that, we're integrating it just to have another program that we're required to have, but that it really addresses the culture and the climate, and really meets our kids where they are, and is trauma responsive, because but it also is a tier one framework. And it's Stephanie in Brisbane, one of when I was there, I don't know, Stephanie, if you're, oh yeah, I do see you. But when I was in Brisbane speaking in September, Emily Berger, who is a research professor at QUT, I think, Queensland, QIT, she and I collaborated together, and she'll be in Houston if anyone's going to the trauma conference. She's coming all the way from Melbourne. And yes, that's what it is. Queensland University of Technology. Thank you. And we were talking about how significant it is right now. And Stephen, I love that you're working with Deb, because her work is so critical for children and youth. And yet it's new. And it's the application of that is new. So Emily was saying, as a university professor, the research is critical, but I'm a practitioner, and so together it is what we need right now. It is time for that significant shift, and we can't do it without the burgeoning and growing research and the application and translation of that research. So yeah, so it's just an exciting time, and again, I'm just so grateful for all of you this evening that are here and thinking about this work. Anybody else have any thoughts or questions? Well, you know where to find me, but Stephen, you don't believe me. So,
No.
I got to get your email out of the chat. But truly, please reach out anytime. And, and even after tonight, if there's something you think about later, don't hesitate to email me. I'll put my email in the chat right now. And then when you go to Revelations in education.com, that's where the 180 days, you can see some examples, and then there's the video that you can preview as well. And we're going to continue to add to it. I mean, I'm making a running list. So it's so good to see my former graduate students on here tonight. David, I missed you. It's so good to see you. And thank you all so much. And Trish, thanks for sharing. And Destin, as always, and Gloria and Melissa, it was good to see you. And Sherry, if you're still on, thank you so much for sharing the work we're doing in Newcastle.
Thank you, Lori.
Yeah, thank you so much. And yeah, just let's keep going. We've got work to do. And now's the time. So thank you. Thanks, everyone. Bye, Rob.